Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for coming for our 2022 Solarize kickoff. Super excited to start things off. I am Rachel Christensen. I'm the Clean Energy Fellow with the Alaska Center, and I'm organizing this year's Solarize campaign along with the support of Chanel Afghan, who is our past Solarize organizer, and our technical partner, Chris Pike, who works for the Alaska Center for Energy and Power. So Chanel, I'll hand it off to you to introduce yourself, and then Chris, if you want to swoop in and do the same.
Thanks. So welcome everyone. I am happy to introduce myself. I stewarded this program in 2020 and 2021. I'm here to help along with any of y'all to support needs in terms of the history of the program. And I look forward to the future with Rachel at the helm. I really love this program because it's really volunteer initiated, it's volunteer run, so it can reflect the communities that it is catalyzed in. I'm also managing some tech help today, so if you have tech questions, you can direct them to me. And that's it for me. Chris.
Perfect, thanks. My name is Chris Pike. I'm a research scientist with the Alaska Center for Energy and Power, or ACEP as we usually call ourselves. ACEP is an applied research energy center located at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. However, I work in our Anchorage office where several of the researchers are based. And we've been involved with the Solarize program since the beginning for many years now. And we basically provide technical support, answer technical questions, that kind of thing. It's great to be involved. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Thank you guys for being here. And before we do get started, one thing that I wanted to mention is that if you did see any advertisements for this program or you got some emails from me, it was probably under the name Solarize Anchorage, but we are not exclusive to Anchorage, as you can tell. Folks in the Valley should be participating in this here too. Our program did start in Anchorage, but has been expanding. So last year we held a program in Eagle River and Turnagain Arm that were able to solarize their communities. And we also have a really successful program running up in Fairbanks. This is their third year running, I believe. So this year we're hoping to continue our efforts in Anchorage, but we're also expanding into the Valley, specifically Palmer-Wasilla. As a proud Valley resident myself, I'm super excited for us to expand into that space. And I think this is a great place for our program to grow. So let's get to it. Like I said, we started in Anchorage. So Anchorage was actually the first Solarize program in Alaska. That program was started in 2018 in the Airport Heights community. The following year, the program was expanded into 4 other communities, and then the next year, 5 more. So we've just been growing our presence statewide ever since. This program, however, is not Alaska specific or exclusive. It has been utilized nationwide as a tool to bring down the cost of solar energy for homeowners and business owners. And we're really excited to keep things pushing forward here in Alaska. Okay, so just a little rundown on what you can expect from this presentation. I'm going to go over the program basics, in and outs of Solarize, what a campaign means, and how you can get started. We're going to hit on some past campaign successes and then get into our application, what materials you would all need to gather if you wanted to apply to be a Solarized community. We then will go through some example pricing of a solar system, as well as the Alaska incentives for this program, or for solarizing in general statewide. Then we'll hit on our tentative campaign timeline for the 2022 season, and we'll have a Q&A period with Chanel and Chris. So I mentioned this at the beginning of the webinar, but for folks who are joining in, just to hit it again, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see there's a chat box function and a Q&A box function. So if you do have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to throw those right into that Q&A box, and we'll address them at the end of the presentation. Okay, so what exactly is Solarize Anchorage? We are a community-driven program that works to make solar energy accessible and affordable to home and property owners. We accomplish this by reducing what we see as the 3 most common barriers to solar panel, and that's high upfront cost, complexity, and customer inertia. So our first barrier that we're going to talk about is high upfront costs. That's most obvious to folks that are trying to get into solar energy. It's a really big investment upfront that's pretty hard to get around. But what we do to address that is coordinate individuals to buy bulk solar panels as a group. So that will achieve volume discounts. All of our pricing is based on a tiered structure, which is specific to installer. We'll have an example of that later on in this presentation where I'll go into more details about what exactly that means. But really all you need to know at this stage is that the more people sign up, the better rates that you will get on solar energy. We also address complexity. So solar technology is really big and confusing to folks like myself who are not very technically minded, but that's what we have partners for. So there's also a lot of really important decisions that need to be made around getting solar, like how many panels you need, which installer to choose, if there's any like specific things in your house or your area that you'll need to know. So like I said, we have our partners over at ASEP to answer any like big technical questions that you'll have. We also offer a free site installation, or sorry, a site assessment where people will come in and tell you like any weird things that will need to be addressed with your area specifically. And we get around those really big complicated decisions by organizing committees in order to make them as a group. So that takes a lot of pressure off of the individual to have all of those answers. And our last one is customer inertia. So when people solarize, or I guess just buy solar independently, it can be a time-consuming process. Folks can take like a year or two to actually get the panels and get them installed, hooked up to the grid, all that good stuff. But when you solarize in a program like this, we have a limited time structure, a limited time frame for the tiered pricing structure. So we do everything as efficiently as possible. If you do choose to solarize with us, we'll have folks sign on in the spring and start installations with a goal to have everything completed by that following October. So this is just a breakdown of where Solarize has happened in the past. As I said, we started in Airport Heights in 2018. Most of our installations have been in the Anchorage municipality, but in the last year we have been growing. Our programs work. We've had 316 solarized houses so far, and we're excited to see many, many more. This is just some Solarized testimonies from folks who have participated in the program in the past. So I reached out to people who participated in our program last year in Eagle River and Turnagain. So these are just some things that they had to say about the process. Everyone had really great positive energy around the program as a whole, wonderful things to say about the installers that they worked with and about their community members. Just some good highlights of people making awesome energy and making their communities a cleaner and greener space, and some cute little pictures of solar panels. Okay, so we want to make your Solarized program just as good as their Solarized program. So these are the elements that we've identified as being things that make our program successful. So the first and most important one is that is community driven. So we'll break up community members into 3 committees of volunteers, which we'll talk about in more depth later in the presentation. But what is important about this campaign, as Chanel said, it's really volunteer oriented. So we need folks who are excited and ready to drive this forward and make a big impact in their community. We also make use of already made networks. So this can really be anything. If you have church groups or coworkers, friends, family members in your area, people that you think might like solar or people that you don't think might like solar, just anyone that you can get the word out to for this program, that's what's going to make a big impact and make a really successful campaign. Then once those volunteers come on board, we'll use their committees to select a bid from an installer as a group. So everyone will have input, well, all the people on that committee will have input at this process. And then the application period will open to register for a solar installation in the spring, with a deadline to participate probably somewhere in March. And then that will be what secures that tiered pricing. So the more people that sign those contracts, the cheaper rates you'll be able to secure. So those committees that I've been talking about, the first one that's going to form is your steering committee. So these folks are going to create with me at the Alaska Center and any other folks that we need on our team, a community specific campaign plan. So this is going to have stuff about how you're going to reach out to your neighbors, what areas you want to focus on. If you already have people in mind that are on board, all that good stuff is going to get incorporated into that campaign plan. We're then going to develop a request for proposals to send out to your installers. So we'll advertise that statewide to solar installers. And then if they choose to, they will put out a bid on that RFP. Once we receive that bid is when the selection committee will come in. So those folks will evaluate the bids received from the contractors based on a scorecard that we will provide to you, but you can also customize that scorecard however you like. So if it's really important to you that you have a local contractor, or if you are really into good customer service and you have a contractor in mind that has that, or if you're really just looking for the best price point, whatever it is, you can score folks accordingly, and then you will select your installer based on that. Once you've selected your installer, the outreach committee will come in, and those people will just make sure everyone in the community knows that this opportunity is available to them. So that's when we can do fun stuff like make workshops, webinars, host community events, make cute little flyers, put in people's mailboxes. We can call people, knock on doors, whatever you think is best for your community to get the word out, we will help support with. Okay, so here's our application criteria for what you will need to turn in if you want to solarize your community. So you'll need 2 volunteer leaders, yourself and 1 other. If you have more in the beginning, that's totally fine. We welcome that. And then you'll need at least 25 contracts of homeowners. So this is not a cap. We want as many people signed up in the beginning as possible. This is a non-committal step. So this is not saying I am going to solarize. This is just saying if a program runs in my community, I am interested in being a part of it. You'll also want to ask those folks if they're interested in volunteering with you at that time, because that's a great way to build connections for when you want to build those committee roles in the future. And then establish your format of community meetings. So that can be virtual or in person if you feel that's safe. Whatever you want to do, you'll just have to establish that and have a plan when you apply for it. Something really important to keep in mind around this time is that anyone can solarize with this model, not just those communities that we select. So I will email out these slides and this presentation tomorrow, so you'll have all this information. We also have our Solarized handbook available to download off of our website, solarizeanchorage.org. So that is what our Solarized program is based on. You are more than welcome to take that information if your timeline doesn't match up or you didn't get enough folks signed on. As long as you have a good core group of people that are really excited to get solar energy, then you can totally go off and get your own solar panels. So now for the fun part, our incentives. The Solarize campaign bulk discount is one that we've talked about a lot throughout this presentation, but we also have the federal ITC tax credit. So that's our investment tax credit for solar, also known as the solar credit. This is at 26% in 2022. In 2023, I believe it's set to go back down to 22%. And then after that, for residential households, it's not guaranteed at all. So this is a really important time for solar energy. What this tax credit does is allow you to take 26% of your total solar investment and use it as a deduction on your federal taxes. We also have net metering. So net metering is a process where excess energy is produced and then sold back to the grid for your neighbors to use. So this is sold in the form, I guess, purchased in the form of credits on your utility bill. So in the summer months, when we have that midnight sun, working hard, working overtime, your panels will be as well, and you'll be producing a lot of excess energy. That energy will flow off into the grid. And in the winter, when we don't see as much sunlight, you'll be able to use those credits as you're on your utility bills then, and they don't expire. So they'll just keep rolling over and hopefully get you some good savings, even in those months when we don't see as much sun. Okay, so this is our example cost estimate. And as a warning right here, I'm going to explain this in a way that makes sense to my brain. And if that does not make sense to you, please, please, please put a question in the chat box. I'm more than happy to go over this again at the end in more depth or explain it in a different way, whatever we need. But on the leftmost column here, you'll see that we have a tiered pricing structure. So what that is a low capacity and a high capacity. When you actually get your proposal from your installer, this is going to be a lot more complex than just these two options. There's going to be like a lot of other brackets and things like that. But for the example's sake, I chose to just have two. So our low capacity is less than 25 kilowatts. So what that means is your whole neighborhood or community, whatever it is, that solarized did not meet 25 kilowatts. Just for a little point of reference in that, the average household that solarizes, with our program, we've seen is about 5 kilowatts. So if you have at least 5 folks in your neighborhood solarizing, then you're already going to be at that capacity. So if you're in your low capacity, you and your neighbors did not meet that 25 kilowatt threshold, and your system size is 5 kilowatts, your price per watt will be $3.50. So that will make for a gross system price of $17,640. That number just comes from multiplying your price per watt by your system size. So a solar ITC, your investment tax credit on that, is just 26% of your gross system price. And when you deduct that, you will get a net system cost of $13,053.60. If you did that same category in the low capacity threshold with a 3 kilowatt system, your gross price would end up being $10,500. Take off your solar investment tax credit, and you would get $7,770 for your net system cost. In the high capacity bracket, so you and your neighbors banded together and you got lots of people signed up, you got over that 25 kilowatt threshold, you would only be paying $3.30 per watt. So that would put you at a $16,632 gross system price for a $12,307 net system. So that's a savings of about $700 versus the low capacity. And then same thing for the 3 kilowatt, paying for a $3.30 price per watt, you would be at $9,900 for your gross system. After the investment tax credit is off, your net system cost will be $7,326. Something to keep in mind, this net system cost is not what you will be paying. The gross system price might not even be what you will be paying. These are example prices, and they don't include things like if you want extra battery backup, if you need like special brackets for your house, if you have something unique about your house, like it's a 3-story house and they have to get the panels really high, whatever it is, all that stuff will go on the books when you get your site assessment. So the installer will come and talk to you about it, and they'll give you like specific numbers for your house. And that net system cost is what happens after your investment tax credit is taken off. So when you get your stuff installed, you'll take that number and put it on your federal tax when you file for taxes in April. And then when you get your tax return, that's when you'll find that net system cost number. Okay, so here is our very generic sample project timeline. For a little bit of reference, we are not on this timeline right now, so we are before this. In January is when we would see like around month 1 when we get those communities finalized. And as I said, the first thing we're going to do is form a steering committee. Those folks are going to get together, make a campaign plan, and issue that request for proposals. We'll broadcast that out to all of our installers, and then our selection committee will form and they will select a contractor. That's when we move into community outreach. So we'll have our registration period start, and we want to get as many folks registered as possible. We can host workshops, webinars, we can have community events, fun cookouts, we can make flyers, make phone calls, whatever we have to do in this stage to get the word out in your community. We'll be there to support you along this path. And then we'll want to get people signed up for site assessments. So once everyone has had a site assessment, they will form a contract with their installer saying, yes, I'm for sure on board. I want to solarize, I want solar panels. And that's when we'll start installations. We hope to have all of our installations done by the end of October. We'll have a big celebration because we're really happy because everyone got good, clean solar panels or solar power. And then we'll finalize the volume pricing, because it depends on how many people follow through with the entire program and actually get them installed. So this is a little more detailed on what we're looking at for dates in 2022. Our application deadline is December 20th. So again, the most important things are those 2 volunteer leaders and contact information for at least 25 people in your community. By January 3rd, we will finalize those communities and let you all know whether or not you were selected. But again, keep in mind, if you have some really excited friends, you can still Solarize on your own. Once those communities have been notified, we'll form an RFP and publicize that out to installers. They will then start forming the steering committee along with us to make campaign plans, and we will get hopefully installer bids by February 17th. These last couple dates here are a little more flexible. Again, this is tentative, so if this doesn't work out perfectly for your community, that's okay. We can work around some of this stuff, but hopefully around then we'll have installer bids coming in. March 10th, we'll select the selection committee will review, and they'll put out their notify the installers, score the bids, all that good stuff. Then registration open, outreach begins, construction, and the end. Okay, so if you are interested, your next step as a community lead is to email me and identify other core volunteers if possible to you. So if you know other people, have other friends in the area, please reach out and ask them if they're willing to like take on this leadership role with you. My email is here on the slide, but I will also, if you haven't received an email from me already, I will be emailing out a packet of materials tomorrow. So that materials packet will include an example survey that you can circulate around in your community to get folks signed on. It'll also have example emails that you can send to people to get them interested, and social media posts that you can post in local Facebook groups and stuff like that. So you'll get all that information, use that survey to collect your 25 contacts, and then submit all of that information to me by December 20th. Okay, I know that was a ton of information, so thank you all for sticking through it with me. And again, please throw any questions into that little Q&A box at the bottom, and we will answer them.
We already have a few questions that we can answer live. I'll like vocalize them for y'all in order that they come in. Starting first with Chris. Chris asks, is this program limited to only residential homes? I'm looking to spearhead an effort to solarize our neighborhood elementary school.
It is not limited to only residential homes. There may be some extra steps that we need to take in there, but I think as far as I know, it should be a similar process, and we can get you signed on just as a residential home would.
Next up, we've got Cynthia. Cynthia asks, is this available to households that would like to expand their current solar capacity?
Correct me if I'm wrong here, Chris, but yes.
Yep, I think that's correct. And basically you'd pretty much follow the same steps in that you would get a site assessment. The installer would come out to your residence and see what's required to increase the size of that system.
Yeah, and many homes have done that before, almost every year. All right, next up we've got Joe. Joe asks, can your installation join another community that does meet the minimum? Should my community not meet the minimum?
Yes, so this is actually something that we're encouraging, especially like up here in the Valley. I know our communities are much less established and they have a lot less people than those dense communities down in Anchorage. So if you start organizing in your community and you're finding that 25 contacts is really hard to reach, then you can reach out to me. And if I know of another program near you that is also solarizing, I can put you guys together and you can just make a community with that group.
Next up, we've got Harriet. Is this price per home or price per group of neighbors? And I think that's referencing the table. Would you like me to pull that up again?
Sure, if you want. That price was price per household. Those, I think, numbers that were in that table, they're all price per household.
Here.
Yeah. So these are for an individual system size of like 5 kilowatts or 3 kilowatts. That's what like an average household may be. That's not like specifically what you will experience, but those are just like average numbers we've seen with Solarize so far.
Oh, generic numbers. Screen sharing now, unless there's a follow-up in the future. And then next up, we've got Mary Kay. And Mary Kay asks, is this program available for condominiums in Anchorage?
We did already have this question and I referred it back to Chris already, but I believe the answer was it depends on how the condominium is owned, if it's like privately owned or if folks own a portion of it. Chris, do you want to take up?
Yeah, and I think the basic answer is it depends. One of the challenges that a lot of people frequently run into is how to take advantage of the tax credit, because ultimately that's what really lowers the price of solar right now. And my understanding is a lot of condo associations are nonprofits. And so if you don't have a tax liability, then you can't take advantage of the tax incentives. But this is not my area of expertise. I think probably the first place to go would be to go to the condo association and to see if it's something that they would even allow to put solar on the roof of the condo, and then to find a way to make sure that there's a way to connect that into the individual meter for the customer. But I think it would definitely take some more work than just the regular residential solar installation.
Okay. Emily asks, is this process different if your community has already participated in past years, such as airport heights?
The process is not different. You would just need to find the same amount of interest, which may be difficult if your area has already solarized. But again, you can utilize communities around you if they choose to solarize this year and you haven't found enough interest in your neighborhood specifically. You can hop in on some other campaigns.
And maybe I'll just interject one quick thing here. Oftentimes, I think one of the areas that is a little confusing for people is to understand that anyone can install solar on their house. The goal of Solarize is to make that easier for all the reasons that Rachel has discussed already. But if you're interested in just putting solar on your house, as an individual, then you can call up an installer tomorrow, and they come out and give you a site assessment and all that kind of stuff. Although they may wait until March when your roof isn't covered in snow. But just an FYI there.
Joan has two related questions. What defines your neighborhood, and can most homes be fitted for solar?
So what defines your neighborhood, we're making very customizable. So a model that Solarized Fairbanks has been using is just choosing like a community landmark, so to say, like a library or a playground or a fire department, whatever it is, and then putting a radius around that, like within 20 miles of this place, that's our community. What we have done with Solarized Anchorage in the past is work through community council areas. However, those work really great for Anchorage. They do not work as well up in the valley because our community council areas are way bigger and oftentimes a lot less active. So there's just not that foundation to work through. So that's super customizable. And short answer for can most houses get solar is yes.
Okay. Next up, we've got Adam. Adam says, will this work in Talkeetna with MEA?
Yeah, so a lot of folks on our Eagle River campaign last year solarized with MEA and everyone got hooked up, all fine. Everyone rolled through.
There were like 30, I forget now, 34 participants.
Yeah.
And next up is Susan. Susan says, does this work for houses with flat roofs?
Yes.
Chris, do you want to give a nuanced answer?
Yeah, sure. So you can definitely put solar panels on a house with a flat roof. Oftentimes there's a slightly increased cost just because of the additional racking that's required. But again, that's one of the things when the installer first goes out to your house to give you a site assessment, he'll take a look at your roof, at the structural capacity of it and all that kind of stuff to make sure that it's going to be safe and that it will work okay. And to go back to the last question about, can you install solar on all houses? Because I think this kind of ties into it. The big thing is that solar panels don't work very well when they're shaded. And so that's generally the biggest constraint is your roof shaded by big trees all the time? Because if that's the case, then you're not going to get the maximum production from those panels. So, and then the other thing is, do you have a roof with a nice south aspect to it? They do install panels on roofs with like a nice west aspect or something like that. And you just kind of have to keep in mind that that's not going to produce quite as much as a south-facing array. So,
All right. Up next, we've got Anonymous. Welcome in. How do people deal with snow on their panels?
So this is actually a question that we've gotten a lot so far. It's a good important question to address. So from what I have been told, at least, no, you don't have to clear snow off of your solar panels. If the sun is hitting the panel enough for you to be making energy, then that will melt off the snow that is on your panel. Chris, is there like anything, should you not clean off your solar panel? Will that like do any damage?
And a lot of people just use a push broom or something like that. You can clear the snow if you want. However, being on an icy roof isn't the safest thing in the world. So I would say that almost no homeowners clear snow off the panels. Now, when you talk about utility scale arrays, that's kind of a different story. I'm an energy nerd, and so I cleared the snow off my panels last year. And I got to tell you that the amount of energy that I generated in February and March was pretty minimal. So you are losing, if snow is covering your array during those months, you are losing that production. But you're not generating a huge amount regardless in those months.
Right. And then next up, Meryl asks, you can still do it on your own with an excited group of people? And what does it mean if your community isn't chosen? This is in regards to the application.
Okay, so basically the entire functionality of Solarize is that it gives you extra rate or better rates when you get a lot of people signed on. So if you're really excited about this in your community, but you can only find like 5 other folks who are maybe interested, then you're really just not going to get any different rates solarizing with us than you would independently. So that's kind of what that's saying is like, we will sign on and support and help with all of those extra steps if you have a big group of people together ready to like make this a really impactful program. And if not, your community will not be solarized, but that doesn't mean that you can't still do this on your own. You can take this information, get together with your neighbors and purchase panels together and still get like cheaper rates.
Accurate. All right, next up, we've got Penelope. Penelope asks, if you rent, can you solarize?
I'm gonna pass this to Chris. I feel like I don't know.
So the answer is usually no for that. And the reason is because you're going to be moving out of that house potentially. I mean, it's really up to the landlord. If the landlord wants to allow you to install, that's fine. But that's generally a tenant improvement, and you may not be getting the maximum payback since depending on how long you're going to be there. So maybe you can convince the landlord to install panels, and you'd be willing to pitch in a certain amount each month or something like that. I'm sure there's some kind of creative solution to that.
Okay, excellent. All right, Emmy asks, the neighborhood I was in the program in 2019 was solarized, but we missed the opportunity. Can we join another?
I'm sorry, I'm a little confused on what the question is asking. Are you asking if you can like join on in a new community program, like you live in a new community, or?
They live in a community that had already been solarized.
Oh, that's already been solarized. Okay. Yeah, so if you, same thing with the person who is living in Airport Heights, if you can get those interested folks around to solarize, then yes. It just may be more difficult to get people on board if there's already been a Solarize campaign run. But 2019 was a long time ago. You never know.
Yeah, good point. All right. Let's see. Dan, I think. Sorry, your name's like a little cut off. The chart you showed tonight is estimating $3.50 per watt. What brand of panels are purchased in bulk? Chris, can you talk about the panels?
Sure. It really depends on the installer that the community chooses. Generally, each installer will use a slightly different panel. However, one of the things that is typically specified in the RFP is that they use tier 1 panels. And basically, tier 1 is a status given by Bloomberg New Energy Finance. They do it each year. It's basically a list of panels that are going to produce as advertised and have good warranties and that kind of stuff behind them. And then as far as, so you have your panels, but then you also have to have an inverter, which is what turns the DC electricity that the panels generate into the AC electricity that our houses use. And so there's a couple of different brands of inverters that the different installers will use. Generally either AP systems or Enphase are the two most popular.
Good to know. Joan asks, do you need a south-facing roof for solar to work? So pass it to Chris.
Sure. You do not have to have a south-facing roof. People have installed solar on east and west-facing roofs as well. You do take a hit as far as your energy production there. So south is optimal, and then depending upon what your goals are, you can decide maybe you still want to go for it even if you just have an east or west-facing roof.
Speaking of goals, we've got 2 questions on goals. Cynthia asks, is there data to show savings per family as well as reduction in carbon footprint? Go ahead, Chris.
I can touch on this a little bit. So for folks that really want to dig into kind of the finances and that kind of stuff, I'm going to post a link to a video in the chat, which my organization, my colleague Michelle Wilbur, put together. I think it's about 45 minutes long. It does get kind of techie, but I would recommend people watch that because it gets into some of that stuff. As far as the carbon footprint and that kind of thing, there's a number of web pages and apps and that kind of stuff that talk about carbon offset from solar, and it depends on what utility you're in and that kind of stuff. And so you can usually go in and put in your zip code and it'll automatically talk about the carbon offset. So and I'll throw the link to that video here in the chat.
Thanks. Joe asks another question. Once you're ready, again, what is the estimated monthly energy credit, for example, in July? And this will depend on like the system size you get, and again, like a lot of individual factors for your household. But I would love to hear like an example of a 5 kilowatt system, maybe, Chris, if you, or maybe even just your system itself, if you've got any examples.
Sure. So I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know how much a system is going to produce in July. I can say that a really good, a well-situated south-facing system with no shading in the Anchorage region is going to produce between 900 and 950 kilowatt hours per installed kilowatt per year. So for example, I realize that's kind of a funny number. For example, if, like Rachel said, the average system was 5 kilowatts. So if you take that 5 and then you times that by 900, you're going to get 4,500 kilowatt hours per year. And so, the majority of those kilowatt hours are going to be produced between, I would say, April and September. And it kind of forms your typical nice little curve. But as far as what's produced in like January, I don't have that specifically off the top of my head. Another good tool, which I'll give to folks, if you want to go just Google PV watts. That's a tool developed by the National Renewable Energy Lab, and it will let you really quickly model the output of a PV system in anywhere in the United States. And so you can throw in, you know, different sizes of systems and see what your expected output would probably be.
Good to know. I will look that up myself. All right. I'm not sure which question to go to next. I kind of got lost. I'm sorry. So Cynthia is saying the program. So Cynthia asks, this program benefits from the bulk aspect of purchasing and installation ? Versus individual family. It's kind of both. If you're willing to let me answer. If you bring a neighborhood together and find all of the people in that neighborhood who want to purchase a solar installation, and they do it all together over one summer, they can get bulk discounts while getting the amount of panels that benefits their own individual needs. I.e., your neighbor could get a 3 kilowatt system, whereas another person in your neighborhood gets like an 8 kilowatt system. And if you like bundle it together, you'll both get more bulk discount ratings. That's the idea behind the tiered pricing structure, is that even if you're getting a smaller system size, you still get around a 10% discount. Does that make sense? You can ask more questions if it doesn't.
And I'll just kind of quickly say that, you know, just to back up what Chanel said is installers generally tell us that for people who go through the Solarize program versus just going to them individually, they will get about a 10% discount, give or take.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see. Next up, Mary again says, in my condo, owners would vote for or against solarization and would be overseen by the condo board under the SNOWS management. So yeah, in a lot of HOAs even and condos, you sometimes have to like approach them before you solarize or get solar panels. And we can help by providing information. That's all I'll say, I guess, unless anybody else has thoughts. Okay, great. Peggy asks, what happens to panels when you need to have your roof replaced?
So I believe they would lift the panels up off of your roof and then replace it. I don't know if it's more complicated than that, Chris.
Nope, you pretty much take the panels off, replace the roof, and then put the panels back on. Any installer can do that. There is typically a charge for that. And I don't know that charge right off the top of my head, but obviously it's just a labor charge since the equipment is already there and the electrical is already pretty much installed. But
another roof related question, can homeowners piggyback solar installation with roof repair and replacement? I think this is like piggyback as for tax incentives. I'm not sure. Chris, I think you've answered this before.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is that the tax credit is supposed to be for the materials and labor for the PV system. However, I'm going to put the caveat here that I am not a tax professional, and you should ask your tax professional for any tax related questions. There's a DOE website I'll put in the chat here in a minute, which addresses the tax credit. But typically what the installers will do when they come out and do your site assessment is they'll take a look at the condition of the roof. And depending upon the installer, if it has less than 5 or 10 years of life left in it, they'll recommend that you get that roof replaced before installing solar, just because it makes the most financial sense. So that's one of the things they should take a look at. And a lot of people do choose to replace their roofs before they install solar.
Good deal. Kevin asks, will you routinely provide info about communities nearby in case we don't succeed to get enough applicants or can't find anybody to join? And so, oh, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Yeah, so we'll have information on like our Facebook page and stuff about what communities are chosen. But if this is in, like, if you're talking about in the beginning time when you're looking for people to sign on to a community, if you just like email me and let me know that you may not, like if you're having difficulties finding folks in your communities, then I can help you like look in other communities to find a good program to sign up with.
Excellent. And what we've done in the past too is just connect the two community leads and like y'all can figure it out with our support. All right, next up, Susan has a question about requirements to becoming a solar installer. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but oh, go ahead, Chris.
Well, I let me try and look. What are the requirements to become a solar installer? So basically the installers are contractors, and so the same requirements that other types of contractors would be required to fulfill in the state, meaning typically bonded and insured and all that kind of stuff.
And then for them to become the installer for your community, volunteers from your community will review bids that they send in, and then they'll score them, and then they'll choose from there, if that makes sense. Okay. Next up, Kevin says you need 25 applicants to start a community. How many people do you need to actually install panels?
Any amount of people, I think. Chris, ground truth that?
Yeah, basically, I mean, it's hard to predict exactly how many people are going to choose to install a PV array. Obviously, it's a large financial commitment, as you know, people have seen. But you know, the good thing is if you can meet that threshold that is typically in the installer proposal that people choose, then you know you can get that reduction. So you know, a lot of times 25 kilowatts has been used just as an example. So that's about five kilowatt systems. So it'd be 5 homes. And I think every single Solarized neighborhood so far has exceeded 25 kilowatts of installed capacity, just as like an FYI.
Okay. Follow up if you have more questions on that. So Cynthia says, is there a way to show data savings per family as, oh, I see. She asked that in both questions, both formats. Also, what is the data on home improvement for final sale of home?
That's a really good question. So what often we do later in this process is there's a green addendum that homeowners can fill out, and that is recognized by I'm blanking on the term, by the home assessors generally, and it's like if there's any home improvements such as energy efficiency improvements, PV arrays, that kind of stuff that have been done, then you write it in that green addendum, and then that is given to the person who does the assessment of the home before it's sold. There is an amount that it's kind of been shown through research that solar improves the value of a house. I don't have it off the top of my head. I should look that up and have that ready, but I think it's probably readily accessible online.
John asks, oh, how many years of solar does it take to break even on cost or on investment? It looks like Chris is frozen. So I've seen in the past around 9 to 10% ROI, return on investment. So I think in some cost estimates, I've seen like 10 years. However, this will be really highly individualized to your own home assessment. That sort of information will be included in the site assessment, where a installer will look to your household. They'll show you, you'll provide them with like electric data. They'll show you what the panels would look like and give you an estimate based on how many panels you want, if that makes sense. Now I'm going to go to a few of the questions that are like more organizational based, if that's okay.
Yes.
All right. Next up, we've got, if I'm having trouble finding another volunteer lead in my community, can you help me connect with someone in my area who may also want to lead?
Yes, of course. As long as you email me and let me know that you're interested, I can definitely let you know if there's other people in your community that have reached out. And if needed, I can help you reach out to folks, like find groups for you to make that ask in and stuff like that.
And then Mary Jo asks, is this program taped?
Is it what? I'm sorry.
Is it like recorded?
Oh, yes, it's recorded, and this and the slides from that presentation will be sent out with that materials packet tomorrow.
Cynthia asks, do you do a campaign with former participants in neighborhoods so neighbors can see advertising of upcoming opportunities, like a for sale sign? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm just a little confused about the question. I was going to look for it in the chat.
I see. It's in Q&A.
Okay.
And Cynthia, if you could like reword your question a little bit, we'd be welcome to hear that. All right.
So I think, sorry, on Cynthia's question, I think that's asking if it's like advertised that that community was chosen, maybe. And in that case, yeah, we'd like post about it on Facebook. Those folks would start reaching out to people in that area, like telling them that they got chosen as a Solarized campaign and to hop on to that opportunity. If that wasn't the question that you asked, put another question in the chat box and we can try and answer that more accurately for you.
Okay, great. Next up, we've got Lori. Lori Harris asks, are you using remote or micro inverter type panels? I'll share with you that every installer that's been chosen has used micro inverters. That way, any panels that are having issues, it won't disrupt the whole system. So got that one done. Moving back up, oh, sorry. Some folks ask questions twice. And so like, I'm running into some problems. Aaron says, how many panels are typically installed on a roof? The typical installation is usually 5 kilowatts. I'm not exactly sure how many panels that comes to, but the average system is like 5.1 or 5 kilowatts usually.
I did see one in the chat that was kind of more of a comment than a question, but asking about solar on like trailers or other non-home things. I believe the answer to that is that they can still be solarized. Oh, good. Chris is here. Maybe he can put more depth into that, but I think that the process can be completed as long as you have like a good enough structure for the panels to be installed on.
Okay. For context, Chris, the question was how many panels are typically installed on a roof? And go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I really apologize. My internet just completely died, but it's back now. But so for context, a 5 kilowatt array is about 15 panels, give or take.
Okay, excellent. It's no prob. I just want to circle back to one question because I was talking about ROI and I want to like ground truth it with you. Joan asks about how many years of solar does it take to break even on cost? And I said ROI I've seen has been usually 9 to 10%, so like 9 to 10 years. Have you seen that accurately with any other places here, Chris, or no?
Yeah, so 10%, a 10% payback for solar is pretty typical in Alaska. You do have to be careful because if there's shading and that kind of stuff, then it's obviously going to be longer than that. Sorry, not 10%, 10 years. 10 years simple payback is pretty normal in Alaska, but that's usually without shading. So if there's shading or anything like that, then you have to be careful. And that's something that your installer should, that this should be shown on the site assessment that they'll do with you. And again, if people really want to get into the weeds, I would recommend they go and watch that YouTube video I posted in the chat earlier. It goes into the finances and all that kind of stuff.
Got it. All right, moving on. So the next question we've got is, how much space do inverters need? Do I need a garage or would it fit into a closet?
Chris?
Sorry, could you repeat that, Chanel?
Oh, how much space do inverters need?
Oh,
Do
sorry.
I need a
Yeah.
garage?
So the inverters that most of the installers are using are microinverters, and they actually go on the backside of the panels. If someone uses a string inverter or a SolarEdge inverter or something like that, then it usually goes in a garage, in the side wall of a garage or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, another question that was asked while you were away, can folks solarize like trailers or other non like house structures?
You could. I haven't seen that done often, but you definitely could. Again, the installer would just have to take a look at the roof structure to make sure that they can support the panels, and that there's basically you're wanting to make sure that the panels have some, the racking for the panels can bolt in to the structure under the roof so that they can not just support the snow load, but also support any wind, any lifting from wind load and that kind of stuff.
Joe asks, what is PB watts? I think this means price per watts. I'm sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
I think he's talking about PV watts, which I mentioned earlier, which is it's a really simple online software developed by the National Renewable Energy Lab. I will post a link. If you Google PV watts, you can find it as well. But it's a really quick and easy way to determine what you think, or like what the expected output of an unshaded array would be in different areas.
Okay. Great. Sorry. Are there families in the community that have participated in the past? I'm not sure what that means. Grace is up next. Grace asks, can the panels be installed near the ground instead of the roof, like south side, unshaded area? And, oh, go ahead.
Yes. Be installed. It doesn't have to be on the roof. It can be on the ground if they need to work around that, but it'll just like change the pricing maybe.
Yep.
They've done ground mounts. They've done like side of the wall mounts, rooftop mounts, things like that. Okay. Then Joan says, are there additional tax incentives in the proposed Build Back Better legislation?
Not that I'm aware of for residential solar. And so just kind of a history of the tax incentives, the tax incentive used to be 30%. And everybody thought it was going to go away like a year or two ago. And then it got put back into some legislation that passed. And so it got extended a couple of years. And so now we're at we're in the current situation where it's going to expire at the end of 2023. But again, it's one of these things that, like I said, it's been extended several times already. So who knows what's going to happen? I'm not going to try and guess.
Fair enough. Ronald says, do you have any experience with Tesla solar roof panels? I'll say that the Solarize program has never enacted with Tesla roof panels simply because they don't sell to the installers that have been chosen. But I'll pass it to Chris too.
To my knowledge, there's no Tesla roof panels that have been installed in Alaska. So unfortunately, that's all I can say. I'd love to see some come up here.
I see.
Just a quick comment I see folks talking in the chat and also questions about those links that Chris posted not being able to find them in the chat. I'll make sure to put them in that email that I send out to all of you tomorrow. So if you haven't been able to get them, you can get them then.
Okay, great. That answers Kevin Bakes's question. And let's circle back to a few different questions we've gotten that I also didn't see. Chris asks about the minimum kilowatt estimated suggested for an elementary school. What do y'all think?
I would say it's really going to depend. I mean, you're probably for a school, you're probably never going to offset all the electricity use with PV in Alaska. But the goal at that point is really just to lower the electric bill for the school. So it's going to be a combination of what the roof space is, what part of the roof do they want to put the solar on, the cost of the solar, all that kind of stuff.
I do also think that Muldoon in Anchorage has solar. One of the Muldoon school has solar. So that might be if you're looking for better number estimates and stuff, you could reach out to them and see how theirs is working for them.
It's a great idea.
And Grace says, following up on the near the ground install, mentioned that it would just change the cost for a ground installation. Would it be cheaper to install than when installing on the roof, or vice versa?
It's vice versa. It's generally more expensive to do a ground mounted installation.
And then Cynthia, you have a question about, that there are families in the community that have participated in the past. I will ask you to elaborate, and then I think that's all the questions I see. Thanks, everyone. And I'll stop the live Facebook once Rachel has concluded.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling through the chat quick. I don't see any other questions either. So thank you all so much for taking time out of your evening to come chat solar with us. I hope that all of your questions got answered, but if you find more or they didn't get answered to your liking, please email me. Again, I'll be sending out some some future materials for you tomorrow. That'll be the recording of this webinar, the slides, and then some example social media posts, emails, things like that to get this started in your community. So again, please reach out if you have questions or need support in any way, but thank you all for coming.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. All right, live is ended. Y'all can continue to ask questions. Should it be helpful? But okay, go ahead, Rachel. Sorry.
Oh no, I really didn't have any. I saw things coming in the chat and I thought they were going to be questions, but they're just thank yous. So
yeah, I thought so.
Okay. We can let everyone get back to their evenings then.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. Bye.
Bye.